We're going to go ahead and get started because we've got a guest today and I want to respect his time. Welcome to Broker Chat. Today we have, I think, Tom Fulkerson and myself, Deborah Blue. We're both brokers in our market centers. And this arena has been put together for agents to come and ask their questions about a topic that the brokers will bring for you to ask questions, whether it's on the subject matter or if you have some other questions that are burning on your contract right now that you want to ask us. And so we're here for you. I thought because of the environment that we have right now with multiple offers and appraisal, different things like that. Hey, Tom, how are you feeling?
Hey, I feel great.
Wonderful. I'm glad to see you're back.
Got a new hip.
I have a new shoulder. You have a new hip. we're bionic now. So we put this together, or Brett put this together so that we could ask some of the burning questions that agents have that sometimes you can't get answered right away, and or you were thinking about it and wondering how you should handle it. So I've asked Scott Murphy to join us with DS Murphy. He's been around for a very long time, probably as long as I have. And we've taken a lot of his CE classes in our market centers. And I wanted him to come on today to talk about how the appraisals are impacting our contracts and different things that have been in the news that people are asking you about as far as their appraisals. And one of the things that I wanted to kick it off with is I last week called an agent about a property and I could tell right away it had been renovated, but there was nothing in the MLS or FMLS about seasoning. And if any of you have looked at a listing in FMLS or Georgia MLS, it's a question you should always be asking when you can tell that something's been renovated in the home. And when I say renovated, I don't mean just, you know, carpet was done. If you see significant changes before and after, that should be a red flag if you have a certain type of buyer. And this particular agent never heard of FHA or VA seasoning. And so I want Scott to be able to talk a little bit about that. The other thing is in the news, there were certain, you know, this is a little bit of a more sensitive topic, but what about if a homeowner says, I don't think I got a fair appraisal, that maybe because of the color of my skin, my appraisal was lower than I think it should be? What should you do if your homeowner asks you that question? So, you know, I know that's a tough thing to ask, but this is the forum to find out the proper way to handle those type of questions. And so without any further ado, I will go ahead and let Scott take over.
Thanks, Deborah. My pleasure to be here with you all today. And please feel free to, you know, we have a relatively small group, so there's more than enough time for you to get your questions answered. So it is a unique time in the market. Deborah sort of hinted at, I've been doing this for 35 years and I've never seen a real estate market like we have today. We're in a very unique situation in which so many of the contracts that are being written have no appraisal or financing contingency. And what that allows to happen is the market to kind of work freely. There's no bound, there's no control from an appraisal. So we need to kind of ask ourselves in a way too, are these sales prices that are being procured, are they really market value, or are we looking at some other value? It's a real challenge to us as appraisers. We've here in Atlanta over the last few years, we've had an extremely strong market with appreciating values, and you know, trying to keep up with that market has been a challenge. But as we turned the corner after the first of the year, and particularly in the last 3 months, values have just skyrocketed. It's due, of course, in part to low interest rates that continue. It's due in part to us, you know, coming out of COVID and the market just naturally getting stronger and stronger. And then it's also due to a huge influx of buyers from outside of our market that we don't normally have. Of course, we always had people moving from everywhere, but all of a sudden now There's a lot of people from California, New York, that, were all of a sudden can work from anywhere and have chosen Georgia and have seen how great it is here, and what the low cost of living is, and great home values and so on. So that's created another layer on top of all this that I think has kind of really fueled it as well. Appraisers, a good example is appraiser is like a guy sitting on a horse backwards, right? We've got to look at the past. I mean, I can't look at anything that's really happened in the future. I can't project what might happen in the future. The closest I get to the future is pending. So if you leave this presentation today with anything, the key to a successful appraisal is properly managing the pendings in your market. You've probably priced your property based on other homes that were already listed that are now under contract. If those homes are due to close in a relatively short amount of time, you want to and need to hold your appraiser off in order to allow that property to close. It's not enough for me to call the agent, find out what it's under contract for. It actually has to close before I complete my appraisal. So appraisal has what we call an effective date. That's the date the appraiser walks through your threshold. So that's the date that we're gonna hang on to, and I can't use anything that happens after that. You've probably seen appraisers include pendings and actives in their appraisal, and that's there as a benchmark. It helps us make sure we're moving in the right direction with our appreciation adjustments, but I can put no weight on those sales. One of the things that my firm does that I know no other appraisal firm does is we will actively look out for these situations for you. So if we receive an assignment on your listing today and we see there's a pending closing this Friday, we're going to ask, would you like us to hold off on the appraisal? Because we know just with initial research and with the way this example is going that we're not going to be able to hit your appraised value without that pending comparable. So why go ahead and do it now when I'm going to give you a value that's too low and it's just going to be in vain? So we believe in the market. We want to try to help the market. So manage your pendings. Hold the appraiser off when at all possible. Tell the lender to hold off when at all possible. If it gets put through and the appraiser contacts you, ask him to hold off. Because once we get our effective date, we can't change it. We can't go and add a pending that now closes later. So you'd have to do a new appraisal or an appraisal update. Most lenders won't honor that. So really try to do that. And I know you all have contingencies and timeframes that you need to work with. So there's a limit as to how far you can hold off. But as much as possible, try to make that happen, because right now we have 40% less sales than we normally do because the volume of sales is so low. The other problem that we're dealing with is I know exactly how FMLS works and exactly how you are charged fees for sale of properties, and there's almost an incentive for some agents not to put things into FMLS. And that's unfortunate because those off-market sales become very difficult for us to be able to use in our appraisals. So if it's not exposed in some way to the market where we're able to verify information, and more importantly, where somebody who's reviewing my appraisal can verify that information, then I can't use it as a comp. And oftentimes those are some of our best properties. So please, if you have a property that sells in a matter of minutes, or you present it at a sales meeting and you link up with somebody, please put it into FMLS. I'm not here to be the FMLS police or anything. It's just how critically important it is to us on the appraisal side to have that data there exposed to the market. The other flip side of that is the one major problem that I see on most bad or low appraisals is a lack of an appreciation adjustment. How can any appraiser in this market say the market's not increasing? I can't point to a single neighborhood or area where values are not increasing, and in some instances in double digit, or we're adjusting as much as 1 to 2% a month in most places. So how can he make no adjustment for appreciation? It's because he's not properly trained. He doesn't know how to extract that adjustment. We don't just go to the Atlanta Journal, or we don't just find a website online that says appreciation is X. Appreciation varies by market to market and also submarket to submarket. So we're not just talking about Virginia Highlands, we're talking about $1 million to $1.5 million homes in Virginia Highlands, or we're talking about 300,000 to 500,000 in rentals. So we have to look at the sub-market and calculate appreciation specifically for properties that are comparable to the subject property. There are a lot of underwriters who are really strict on this and really cumbersome and asking the appraiser for further and more documentation. And unfortunately, that's forced a lot of appraisers to just simply become more conservative. And it's unfortunate because I'm the chairman of the Georgia Real Estate Appraisers Board. And when we get a case put before us, it's just as unethical to be arbitrarily low as it is to be arbitrarily high on an appraisal. So some appraiser who thinks it's okay to be conservative is mistaken. We're supposed to represent the market. Appraisers don't determine market value. Your buyers and sellers are the ones that are determining market value, particularly when you list a property and you get 15 offers, all 10 or 20,000 above list. That's pretty much market value. Now, the challenge is for us as an appraiser is how can I prove that? Again, I'm riding my horse here backwards, and I've got to look at things that have closed. And even just barely getting that 1 or 2 pendings that are about to close is hardly enough for me to bring my value up to where some of these sales prices are. So,
Scott, there's a question here from Brittany. Brittany, you want to unmute and go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Hey, Deborah.
Hi.
My question was, if we have an appraiser that does not do that appreciation adjustment, is there anything that we can do after the fact? Because obviously we don't know about it until we find out. And if it's already kind of hurt us, is there anything that we can do?
Sure. This is a real sticky situation because trying to prove those time adjustments are very difficult. The data is so scattered. So if I do an appraisal and do my analysis and get a pretty good approximation of what the appreciation is, support that information in my report and make those adjustments, the underwriters are usually okay with it. When we come at it from the scenario that you've presented where the appraisers made no adjustment, now it's very difficult to go back and prove to that underwriter what the adjustment should be. It's not real cut and dry. But the answer to your question is yes, we can go back and request that the appraiser reanalyze this and make the appropriate adjustments. The difficult part is going to be proving it. Another thing a lot of appraisers don't quite understand is they say, well, the property just sold last month. There shouldn't be an appreciation adjustment. Yes, there should. Furthermore, appreciation is based on the contract date. Here's another issue that appraisers are having difficulty with. I know most of you, and historically, when you would write a contract, would set it to close in 3 to 4 weeks. I think 30 days would probably be the most common closing date scenario. Now in today's market, we've got sellers who don't know where they're going and they're demanding 60, 90 days or more for closing. What we prefer to see is an immediate close and then a lease back. That way we get that data. But with these properties being held up under pending for an extra 2 to 3 months, it holds my best comparables at hostage to me and doesn't allow me to use them until they actually close. So that's something to keep in mind when you're structuring your contracts. And if this is your market and you want to help your market move along, try to get that immediate close with a lease back.
Scott, some agents that are newer, can you talk about some of the renovations that are going on? Since we're on the topic of appreciation, there's a lot of renovation going on with investors, and a lot of agents are working with investors. How should they protect that? I get a lot of questions about, I don't know if it was permitted, what do I do? And as an appraiser, are you pulling permits? Are you looking that deep? Or should we provide that type of information?
Great question. And your comment earlier about, the difference between sort of upgrades or a fluff and flip And a true renovation is very important. So we want to look to make sure that the mechanicals, that the house was really renovated to a good quality standard. So we look closely at that. We do not verify permits yet. However, that is on the horizon. A lot of these things start with the relocation companies. So the relocation companies have started instituting this now, where when I do an appraisal for a relocation, I'm to verify permits. We don't see that in the Fannie Mae realm yet, but it may be coming. So be aware of that. It is important. What do we do if we have a property that's not permitted? Well, Fannie Mae will still allow it, even if we disclose that it's not permitted. They just want me to find other comps and use those that were not permitted. Now that's the impossible part. Where am I going to be able to find and verify that information? But so we do look at that. We look at the quality of the renovation and try to find comparables that are as similar as possible.
Right. In the news, we had some controversy and some sensitive things that were going on as far as homes appraising, and sometimes sellers will ask the agent, should I remove pictures? Should I remove personal items? Things of that nature. Have you run into that, and what is your comment on that? And what is your suggestion on what an agent should suggest to the homeowner should they feel that way?
Yeah, it certainly is fine and maybe a good idea to remove any personal items. When we're even taking our pictures, we have to be very careful that we don't include any personal items. We can't include pictures of people in our pictures. We can't include people in our pictures, for this whole reason that we want to make sure that everything is unbiased, that there's no discrimination. There's been a lot of this focus in the news about appraising, and unfortunately, I'm sure there probably is some small degree of it out there. But most of the stories that I've read, it's probably just a really bad appraiser. But we all need to be conscious of this and do everything we can to, everything we can to make sure that's not part of the equation.
Thank you. One of the things I learned, I've been doing this 25 years, and a few years back, I took one of your CE classes. I try to take them as much as possible. And you taught, and I shared this with you before, I usually do an appraisal package. Is that still popular in this market? I don't know. But one of the things that you shared, and I had never heard it before, I have a lot of sellers that also are investors, and they've rented the properties. And one of the things I never included in my appraisal package is the fact that the property was income producing. And you talked about that. Can you touch on that again for those that have never heard that before? Because I do include that in my appraisal packages now.
Yes, and appraisal packages in general are phenomenal. What you want to include in your appraisal package is as much relevant information as possible. Remember, especially during these times right now, we are so busy, and we're trying to turn these appraisals in a matter of days. So once we do focus on your property, we want to make sure that we can follow through and get it completed. So have the fully executed contract in your package. And if there are subsequent addendums to that, particularly price changes, make sure that's the top page. It's a horrible situation when you have an appraisal that comes in low simply because the appraiser didn't realize there had been a price change and it was well within his range to be able to get there in the first place. So, and a list of upgrades. Now you're going to normally include that anyways. It wouldn't even hurt though for the appraiser to have the dollar amounts. Not that I'm necessarily going to give you $150,000 for that $150,000 kitchen, but remember, I have to convince an underwriter of my adjustments. So having more detailed information about the extent of the renovation is great. Comparables, supply the appraiser with as many comparables as possible and don't leave out the bad ones. Tell the appraiser, so write on your MLS sheets or your FMLS sheets why this is a good or bad comparable, what the reasons are, and the appraiser should welcome that and then do their own research. Now, you're probably going to come up against some unfortunate appraisers, and who are going to give you the stiff arm. They're going to say, I'm not allowed to talk to you, and you know, you're biased. And that's completely unfortunate, because appraisers should welcome all the information. You're a wealth of information, and we should take that information and then verify it on our own. Simply turning it down from the onset is ridiculous. And so that brings up the question, are you allowed to talk to appraisers? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And I not only encourage, but require my appraisers to talk to you. We want to get your interaction, get information about the market. Also included in that package should be information about those multiple offers. If you want to give us the front page, maybe sort of a list of what those offers were, that too is important for me to tell the underwriter that there were 15 offers and here they are, and so on. So all that information is great. If you've got a survey, that's good. You know, anything that you can to try to help the appraiser out. So I do prefer if you try to meet the appraiser there. The appraisers are very busy, want to try to move as quickly as they can, but I think it is important for you to have that few minutes of time to be able to share that information. Now, once the appraisal is completed and turned into the lender, I don't want you to talk to the appraiser again. You may have had a great relationship, you know, you're on, you know, you have a lot of things in common, whatever. And it's a very simple thing. He just missed a bathroom or something. Don't call the appraiser. It's only it could only backfire on you. What you need to do in that situation is, if there's an error or problem with the appraisal, go back through the lender. So write a rebuttal letter. And if you work with us, and this kind of ties into your question, do you need pre-listing consultation appraisals right now? And the answer is maybe. One of the things that we can help you with is if there is a value issue, and help you fight with it. We all know, well, none of us know what the value of property is, but I mean, we all know that it's going to sell very quickly, and none of us can really predict exactly what that number is going to be. But we'll be there to help you on the backside. We'll be there to help you on a VA if they call in a tidewater where they're feeling they're coming in low and need additional information. So we'll be there to help you with that information. Also, the appraisal is going to give you that physical information you need, the true square footage, the true room count, all that information for you to be able to make the most accurate decision. I had one recently that we did, and the agent, you know, was very sharp, but she was going off square footage in the tax records, which was significantly off. And once I got her to calm down after I told her it was 1,100 square feet smaller than she thought, she understood, realized, and was very appreciative now that she could do her analysis a better way. So, you know.
Scott, we've got two questions from Horace Ridley. Horace, go ahead and unmute and ask your question, please.
Okay, I was typing in right before you said it. Take the easy one first. What is the best way to deal with tidewater? It's kind of, as an agent, it's frustrating because I'm like, you're the appraiser, you're the expert. Why are you asking?
I know.
Why are you asking me?
Scott, before you answer that, we may have new agents that don't know the term tidewater. So let's explain that and then answer Horace's question, please.
Yeah, this is so typical for the military, right? The VA, they have to code name everything, you know, Desert Storm. And so that what they did was they decided to put the rebuttal process before the completion of the appraisal. If the appraiser felt they were going to not be able to hit value on a VA appraisal, they're to stop work. They immediately contact the processor. Then there's 48 hours for the processor to contact the agents and reply with comparable information. The problem between this, the difference between this and a normal rebuttal, like you get an appraisal that comes in low, you've got an appraisal in your hand, you can see what comps they used, and then you can go back and give further information. At this point, you have no idea what comparables the appraiser is considering, so you're kind of shooting in the dark. But again, another reason, if you hire us, we'll go back with all of the solid information back through VA to help you to get that value up if at all possible. So.
Okay. And then my second question is slightly off topic. I have a young lady who's looking to purchase custom built home by Toll Brothers. And they said, we have no appraisal contingency. We'll open the lots and your bid on them. So, you know, your time to build. So any thoughts on that from an appraiser point of view, maybe what we can advise our clients about, because we may be in a totally different market a year from now.
Yeah, it's a completely different market. A lot of builders are actually buying back contracts because they're not able to proceed forward and build. So it's a real challenge. There's even some builders that are leaving the contract open where here's what the price is today, but if lumber or other things increase, your sales price is going to increase. So yeah, we have to just be careful and watchful of that.
Can you comment on the lumber situation? I read 4 different articles this weekend. 2 of them said they were increasing. The other 2 said they were plummeting. So I have no idea which direction they're going.
Yeah, you know, for the longest time I was blaming Canada because I know we get a lot of lumber from Canada, but I've seen some, and been on some calls as well. It's really even local lumber. You know, the whole stimulus thing caused a lot of people to sit at home. And so they're not out cutting down trees. They're not working in the lumber mills. And it sort of starts all the way back at the very beginning of a 2x4. And that part needs to kind of get rebuilt so that the whole system can start to come back up. So, but as far as I know right now, lumber prices still are up high, and it's the availability of the materials that makes it so difficult.
I think Brittany has another question. Brittany, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
So you were talking about the builders, and if they're not canceling, some of them are adjusting the sales price midway through. I have 2 that just got notice last weekend that if they want to proceed, their sales price is going to increase $45,000 because the increased cost of materials that the builder is incurring. And so we have a real concern about the properties now appraising for that additional $45,000. It's the same house.
Yeah. Yeah, so it really brings us back to what is market value. And it's always difficult doing new construction because, you know, really a resale home, you're able to test it against the market, but new construction, they say they buy in at a particular price, then they go to the design center and they add 40 or 50,000. They're really developing a different number than what market value is. And now when you're adding on additional costs that really have no seated benefit, they didn't get more square footage, they didn't get more land, it's just an additional cost. Is that going to be reflected in the appraisal? And it's going to be a challenge. It may be very difficult to get there, but if enough people before your clients accept that and actually close, then there'll be precedent for that. And so we've just got to see how it all plays out.
Scott, talk about square footage. I get this question as the broker a lot. When a new agent is entering a listing, they tend to look at the tax records. And I always tell everyone, you know, as far as the internet is concerned, garbage in, garbage out. It's not always accurate. You maybe ask the homeowner. But can we talk a little bit about making sure agents understand below grade, above grade, what you're actually looking at? It doesn't mean that the homeowner wouldn't get credit for having a finished basement, but can you just give some insight on that?
Yes. So when you're taking a listing, ask the homeowner for a prior appraisal. Most of them should have that, and you can look at it and it will show you the above grade gross living area, and then it'll show you the below grade space and how it's broken up. Basically, the definition of gross living area is if you put your foot on the floor of any given level and any portion of that entire level is below the grade of the ground, we just have to consider that separately. So your traditional 2-story home on a basement, the whole front and then sloped off on the side is below grade. So there's no question that that is a below grade space. Same may be true with a split level or a split foyer home where part of it is submerged below the ground. We're just going to look at those spaces separately. So again, it's apples to apples. So if I've got a 2,000 square foot traditional 2-story home on a 1,000 square foot basement and it's all finished, it's not the same as a 3,000 square foot home on a slab. That's more valuable. So I'm going to go look for other 2,000 square foot homes with roughly 1,000 square foot finished basements and make comparisons back and forth. So always make sure you split out that lower level. It is given value. There's no specific formula as to how much value. You might say typically 50, 60, 70 cents on the dollar. There are certain situations when I've adjusted as much for that below grade space as the above grade space. It's the market has to speak to me and tell me the value of that space down there. Likewise, we have to categorize our room count consistently. So if you agree with me that I have a 2,000 square foot house, in that part that's above grade, I have 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. That's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house. Yes, there is a finished basement with an additional bedroom and bath down there, and I will make note of that and give credit for it, but it's still a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house when I'm comparing it to other homes. Now, I want you to go put the placard out on the sign that says 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths house and market it that way, but just understand how appraisers look at it. Because what if our subject property only had 3 bedrooms above grade? Isn't that significantly different than a house that has 4 bedrooms above grade? And then there may be a situation that you've been into a 1-bedroom house. There's a lot of these big sprawling ranches with 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and then you go down to, we don't want to call it the basement, we want to call it a terrace level. The terrace level, and there are 3 more bedrooms and 3 more baths down there. It's not a 4-bedroom, 4-bath house. It's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house. So we just always try to compare apples to apples.
Scott, I know this is putting you on the spot, but you know that because we are overbidding on some of these properties, if you were to take your crystal ball, what do you think the future looks like for some of these buyers that are, you know, foregoing their appraisal contingency and paying over ask, you know, 40, 50,000, you know, in other states you've heard 100,000. You watch HGTV and you see people just overbidding like it's the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
We won't hold you to this, although it is being recorded. What is your thought on that?
Well, I mean, as kids, we all played that game where they played the music and then they stopped. And if there wasn't enough chairs, then you were in trouble. I think we're going to have buyers at some point. Now, what I don't think is going to happen is I don't think it's just going to abruptly stop and then values are going to decline. What may happen is it'll taper out and it'll level off. This is not like the prior recession. We don't have subprime loans. We don't have an unsolid base. It's a very solid base. And so values will just eventually begin to just taper off. So I think they're safe. But at some point it will slow back down, and it's got to. I mean, if we're appreciating at 2% a month, you know, I mean, that's 20-something% a year. That just is not sustainable.
I agree with you. We're not talking about the same market that we had, you know, back in 2008, because back then no one had equity. You know, everyone used their home like an ATM, where now we're dealing with a market where people have equity. And so the sky's the limit at this point. I'm the same, I think the same way you do, as far as this is a very unusual market. It's great for all of us and we're doing well, but we also have to look forward to what type of conversations we're going to have with those new homeowners when they're ready to sell in the next 3-5 years, maybe even 7, for those that have, you know, paid a little bit more than they should have, in my opinion. What other nuances do we need to pay attention to when we are talking to the homeowner when we're selling the home, as far as, you know, every homeowner says, you know, my neighbor sold their home for, and usually my answer to that is, well, will they let us see the settlement statement so we can really see what they paid? Because when they're talking over the hedges, they're going to tell them the price, but they don't tell them all the terms of that contract, which, you know, a $400,000 house really sold for $350 after it was all said and done.
Yeah. Well, and this is important. You know, we have to look at solid comparables. And the other thing too is, remember, when you're listing a property in a given neighborhood, or you're looking to buy property, there may be 20 sales, but of those 20 sales, how many of them are truly comparable? Is the house next door that we're talking about the same, very similar house, or is that one completely renovated or has a full finished basement when we don't? That's not comparable. So make sure you're only using comparables. Don't restrict yourself to stay in your subject subdivision like you have to do that. That's not a requirement. You've probably heard all these appraisal rules that you can't go more than a mile, you can't go over so many months, you got to stay in the subdivision. Those are shoulds. Those are guidelines. And we as appraisers need to think like buyers. So just put your buyer's hat on. Where would you drive them to show them the next most similar comparable? And it might be more than a mile away. The thought is you're going to probably want to stay in the same township or city or county. You're going to want to stay in the same school district possibly. So those things are far more pressing than a sheer mileage variation. Now, time is a lot more critical right now. We can't go back 6, 8, 9 months for comparables because appreciation has not been linear. So I can't just take a sale that happened last fall and try to appreciate it up. It won't work. So in addition to having 40% less sales, I can't go back as far as I used to be able to for comparables. So it really creates a difficult situation.
Horace, go ahead and unmute. You've got a couple of questions for Scott.
Okay. So question number one. When I look at split levels, so I know some split levels are completely above ground and then some are kind of below ground. So I know I'm getting real probably anal here, but if I'm trying to do a split level to split level comparison, if my subject is all completely above ground, should I skip those that have any part of it below grade? Since I'm assuming if the whole thing is above grade, it will count higher than any part that's below grade. Right?
What's real critical and important here is consistency. So I probably wouldn't skip any other split levels that are in your subdivision that are very similar in condition and that sold recently. I would just make sure I look at them the same way, and maybe their one level was slightly below grade. Count that the same way you count yours. So that is, make sure you're comparing apples to apples. We see this a lot in townhomes, right? The townhomes, that lowest level, there's always a question as to, is this lowest level basement or is it gross living area? You've got the question of, do you enter on that very lowest level or do you enter on the middle level? So the answer to those questions is consistency. So make sure you're looking at, you determine how you're going to analyze your subject property, and then you look at your comparables the same way. And you might have to do some math to figure out what that basement space is and either add it or subtract it to make sure that you're being consistent across the board. Like, don't say your subject has all gross living area and then take a comparable and say that it has partial basement when they're really built by the same builder and the same design. So.
Okay, thank you. That's good. I heard an appraiser say if the subject is in a quote unquote good school district, that's only time they're making adjustments for bedrooms. Your comment on that?
No, bedroom adjustments, say you've got two houses that are both 3,000 square feet. One's 5 bedrooms, one's 4 bedrooms. You're probably going to split down the middle as to who wants what. Would you rather have 4 theoretically larger bedrooms or 5 somewhat smaller bedrooms? So it has nothing to do with school district, in my opinion. It might be if you're in more of a family type neighborhood than maybe more of a retirement neighborhood that the extra bedroom might be worth more. But no, and so there are times when I don't make a bedroom adjustment. I'm going to pick it up under square footage. Usually we see a bigger difference between 3 and 4 bedrooms than we do between 4 and 5 bedrooms. But again, analyze the market, look what that market's looking for. There are some markets that are very focused on multi-generational housing, and they want to make sure that they have additional space for other family members. So a in-law suite or finished basement with a kitchen area is very important. So.
Okay, and my last question is, if I have a ranch and it's hard to find comps, can I use a 2-story in that neighborhood? I've seen it on appraisal sometimes,
Yeah,
but I've
if
been
you
told
have
not
to.
to.
I mean, the ideal answer is no, you should use all ranches, but sometimes we've got to use just what we have. I mean, I've got to find sales, and but what should happen is there should be an adjustment for your ranch being preferable. In virtually every situation, the ranch is going to be preferable. What I might look for, if I have to go with 2 stories, is find a 2-story that has a master on the main, because that's kind of what we're talking about with a ranch and one of the big draws to it. Yep.
Scott, I'm reading a lot about ADUs, and in certain counties we have that. How should we handle a listing that may have that type of dwelling on the property, an ADU?
Great, you're right up to speed with our terminology. An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, and it is the latest hot button for underwriters. Underwriters are very sensitive to this. What an ADU, of course, is that it basically means that you have a separate living area that has a true cooking source. It can actually be occupied and lived in completely on its own. So it really all comes down to, is there a stove, oven stove, range, that type of scenario in it? Because we have tons of homes that have kitchenettes with little sink areas. We have tons of homes that have bars in the basement. But could it really be used on a long-term basis as a living quarter? Now, to you as an agent, as to a buyer, to have that full in-law suite with the cooking source and everything is a big advantage. And I just spoke to Horace about that, how preferable that is in a lot of markets. But to an underwriter, it creates a red flag and a potential liability. And it all comes down to Airbnb and everything that goes along with that, where everybody's trying to rent out their space and make additional income. They want to make sure that, you know, there aren't multiple living spaces in here and that their loan is going to be less secure. And that's why there are different underwriting requirements for multifamily properties than there are for single family owner occupied properties. So it's more risky for a lender to invest in a property that's going to have multiple income streams. So that's where it comes down to. And so you might see an appraiser downplaying your kitchenette. You know, I'm still giving it value in there, but I got to be careful with my wording so I don't set off an alarm with an underwriter.
Right, Scott, in the last couple of minutes here, if there are no other questions, I know that your firm also offers agents some pre-listing appraisals and things of that nature. Take a few minutes and give your little infomercial on what you can provide to us as far as helping us prior to the listing, or, you know, even if a buyer wanted to do a pre-appraisal just to get the value. I noticed cash buyers typically don't do any kind of appraisal, which makes also no sense to me.
It's kind of crazy. We do a lot of appraisals for cash buyers. So if you've got a cash buyer that wants to know where they are, and even if it were to come in still 10,000 less than what they're paying, they want to know what that number is so that they can move forward. And we're happy to speak with them. We are their consultant, and we can assure them that they're still getting a good deal. Because if they drop this deal just because of $10,000, the next house they're going to get is going to be $10,000 even more. So it's not a deal killer if that's the scenario. But our consultation appraisal was designed around pre-listings. We want to come out and help you make sure that you get the property listed properly. Right now, the focus of our consultation isn't necessarily just on value, because as we said earlier in the presentation, that number is an unknown. It's going to change minute by minute. But we will help you understand where that threshold will be, how much could it appraise for, because you're going to have buyers that are going to have an appraisal. They have some cash, but they don't have an endless amount of cash. So you want to know where it's going to appraise. Also, you want to know if there are appraisal issues. We're going to look for any FHA issues, VA issues, any of that will be all taken care of. Or comparable issues, what type of comps are out there. Again, that bank appraiser's only got a day or two to look around. If I can take 3 or 4 days, do a more in-depth research, provide him with an appraisal where he can use my comps, go verify them, check for his own comps. Also, he can take my floor plan, re-verify it, saves him a lot of time. So also, if the bank appraiser comes in below our appraisal, we will step in on your behalf and write the rebuttal letter. So if any of you agents have had to write a rebuttal letter before, you know how difficult it is. You don't know which things to go after. You know, I can analyze that appraisal in a matter of minutes, see where the errors are, and know exactly how to go back to that underwriter and convince them to to get this appraisal changed. So all very important parts of the puzzle. And as the market begins to calm down, the pinpointing the value become a lot more important. We also have a home inspection division, if you weren't aware of that. So our home inspectors cover the entire metro area and are very good. They're also very, they got good bedside manner, if you will. And we were very important. It's one of our most important things is I let a very experienced inspector go because he was not treating the clients the way I wanted him to treat them. There's no reason there to be adversarial. It's pretty cut and dry. I mean, if there's issues, there's issues. We're going to talk about them, but we're not going to make a million different contractors come out to a property. If you got a handyman that can fix the electrical, the plumbing, and all this, that's fine with us. So we also fly drones over every property. You'll get a drone survey of your roof. They can, of course, inspect pools, fireplaces, all the other things that inspectors do as well. Particularly if you have a cash buyer, this is a good time to think of us because you could have an appraisal and an inspection done together. We will work in tandem. We'll let the inspector get a jump on it. And if there are any inspection issues that are going to cause the contract to die, we'll pull back on the appraisal and not do it. Otherwise, we'll move forward and you'll have them all done in a good time frame. We'll also offer a $100 discount on each, the appraisal and the inspection, if they're ordered together. And we do have a lot of classes, and we're starting to get back out into the field where we can come and teach your classes in person. Or my favorite class we have is called the field trip class, where we pick one of your listings and we meet out there. And we're going to have 30, 40, 50 agents going through your brand new listing. And we're going to you're going to spend half the time with our inspector to see what he looks for and half the time with the appraiser to see what he looks for. So it's a great class. You get to ask all your questions. Everyone comes away with a lot of good information.
Hey, Scott, can I ask you a question about lot size? So I'm looking at a builder buying a lot that's half the size of the normal lots in the neighborhood. Will have no backyard, not much of a front yard. How would you say that would affect value?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of appraisers say a lot is a lot is a lot, and I do not agree with that. And I think you're inferring the same thing. You know, a buyer wants to have as much land as possible. And so an appraiser would take that into consideration. With that said, now is the time to bring out your distraught properties, your properties on odd lots, small lots, your properties that back up to high tension power lines or that are on really heavily traveled roads, because the negative impact of these things is going to be so much lessened because of the sheer supply and demand. So we would make an adjustment for the smaller lot, but it's not like it's going to be worth half as much as the other lot. It's just a smaller contributory adjustment for that value of the extra land.
Scott, do you also, and I don't know if we have any commercial agents on this call today, but how do you handle commercial appraisals?
We do have a commercial appraisal department. Actually, I prefer to call them our complex appraisal department, because everyone thinks commercial, they think of office buildings and what have you, but my complex appraisal guys do all the ones on large acreage. They do the ones that are on secondary roads that could possibly be used as office. They're doing the ones with the highest and best use issues. So anything that's a little complex goes through those guys. So yeah, we can handle any appraisal product, whether it's residential or commercial.
And I had someone ask me over the weekend, they had an appraisal situation and the homeowner wanted to make sure that the appraiser knew that they had a true home office. I didn't really know what that meant. I guess it's just a buzzword because we're all basically working from home. Yeah. Are you seeing any kind of trend with appraisals towards true home offices now?
Not per se, but I would agree that more people are working at home now. So there are a lot of things, you know, people ask me all the time, is there a list of adjustments? Where can I go to find my adjustments? There is no list. And for the very reason that COVID has caused the value of pools to significantly increase. So, you know, if you had a $500,000 home and you had a, you know, $80,000 or $90,000 pool in it, we might have adjusted, I don't know, I'm just throwing numbers out, 30 or 40,000 before. Now we're probably adjusting $60,000 to $70,000. You know, pools are so popular, buyers really want them, and the ability to get one installed right now is almost impossible. So many things can change over time, and the value of having some kind of dedicated home office or area in which you could work, or multiple home offices for husband, wife, or kids, or what have you. So, you know, it all changes with time.
Yeah, yeah, that seems to be popular, that working from home, kids homeschool, that type of thing. So I guess that might be a trend in the future for home builders as well. We'll start seeing little home working niches or something like that. Well, we're coming to the end of the hour here. If there are no other questions, Scott, I want to thank you again. You have tons of compliments in the chat about the quality of the work you guys do. And one thing I want to point out is that someone said that they like the fact, sorry about that, you guys, that they like the fact that, I can't turn that off for some reason. There we go. They like the fact that your appraisers are familiar with the area. So
Yeah.
many times an appraisal will come in, and let's just call it East Cobb, and this appraiser is coming from, you know, Rex, Georgia,
Yeah.
and doesn't have a clue about the East Cobb market. So we do appreciate the fact that you do take the time, as you said, the bedside manner of knowing that your appraisers know what's going on in the area that they're working in.
Yep. That's so important. Well, it's been my pleasure. I'm always available. Feel free to pick up the phone or shoot me an email or text anytime you have any questions. And we'll look forward to seeing you at some of our classes in the future.
Thank you. I'm sure we will have you in our market center soon.
Great.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.